What are some useful tips and tricks when it comes to making a good impression in a job interview? So in this video, I'm going to touch upon some of the more interesting information related to this aspect, which you should ideally keep in mind and be aware of throughout your interview. The first thing I want to touch upon here is rapport. So you always want to have a rapport with your interviewer. You always want to have a connection with that person. Why would you want to do this? Well, you want to do this because you want to better understand them. And one way, you could better build a rapport with that person is to simply mirror their communication style, or mirror their gestures a little bit, subtly, not a lot. But what you want to do here is to create some sort of symbiosis, to create, an enjoyable experience for both sides here. Now, what happens if you don't? Well, you risk very much creating a very transactional environment where they simply would ask you a question, you would answer it, and they would ask you a question more. Okay, thank you, goodbye. Right, so you don't score points at those interpersonal relationships, which are a much sought after competency in today's interviews. The second thing you want to keep in mind in a job interview is, maybe unsurprisingly for some, not to be talking for too long, not to talk about unnecessary things like, right, you're being asked a question, you politely answer that question. If it's a behavioral question, you go with a star format, you go with around 1.5 minutes, you do what it takes to concisely present that information, and there's no need to add some extra details. They might ask you if they really wanted to. Now, on the other extreme here, there are some people that really take that 1.5 minutes as a limit, as a strict limit, as an analytic limit, as to never go beyond that limit, which is totally false as an approach. I mean, you should take your time to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Just ensure that you are concise and you are ensuring that you save those people time and you actually want to score points during an interview. So what better way to score points than to be concise, to the point, and to basically communicate the idea that you want to transmit and hopefully start a conversation. So avoid talking for too long in a job interview. The third point, and a very important one, especially for senior roles, is many people tend to be extremely negative, way too negative in a job interview. Just to give a simple example here, I have many clients who are reapplying for a job after being on their own, after launching their own startups for a period of time. And needless to say, they've been going through some rough times, right? Like, you don't apply for a job because your startup went that well. But the challenge here is that you should stop with the negativity when going into a job interview. You should actually focus on the positive side of things. You should focus on your core strengths. You should actually sell yourself as good as possible. So if you get asked about what about your previous startup, don't just say it was a miserable failure. I don't want to hear about that again because I'm a failure, and the negative spiral. So try to be positive, like look at everything as a learning experience. Try to keep your audience engaged and be positive. Yes, positivity sells, in case you didn't know this, but I'm sure you know this. And also, there's another tendency to be overly negative when answering behavioral questions, such as tell me about the time when you failed. Okay, you focus on the failure, but the main highlight of your answer is the learnings from that failure. So when you focus on the learnings, and I learned to grow from this experience, and now I'm very successful at doing this type of thing. Like, don't just end it like I learned from my mistakes and I will never do mistakes again, and I'm doing my best every single day not to do mistakes again, right? Like, this sounds negative. So if it sounds negative to you, it sounds negative to the interviewer, and that's not to your advantage here. The fourth point that I want to touch upon here is that many people tend to concede defeat too quickly in a job interview. In other words, as soon as they get asked for a tough question, they think for 3 to 5 seconds, I'm sorry, I don't know. Like, it's a struggle. So the people appreciate the fact that you really spend the necessary brain cycles to do this. And more often than not, this happens for the failure story. So surprisingly, if I ask you right now, tell me about time when you failed, you say, oh, I have plenty of failures. But when I ask you, okay, could you talk about a proper failure in a star format? I guarantee you it will take you a bit longer to process that information. But nevertheless, never get away from that thing. So try to focus on the moment, try to deliver the best version of yourself on the spot. And I remember I once had a candidate going into an interview, and after the interview said, hey Dan, they asked me what's the most innovative idea that I had in the past 6 months. And I said, after 5 or 10 seconds, I said, okay, I'm sorry, do you have another question? And but even if I had one, I wouldn't have spilled the beans for them. So you can imagine here, I mean, in a job interview, do whatever it takes to get the job. That's your end goal, to get the job. So being, having an attitude that you are, okay, do you have other questions for me? It will not get you anywhere. I mean, I'm talking about high-performing jobs, I mean, if they are constrained to take you in, yes, maybe that will work, but I'm talking about good jobs, about good paying jobs here. So do not concede defeat too quickly here, and especially when you're talking with tough interviewers. So in some companies, they're called bar raisers. Especially then, you should realize that their primary purpose is to see whether you really want the job. And more often than not, people can tell if you really want the job by how interested you are into properly answering those questions. Like, notice here, I didn't talk about the preparation, all that stuff. That's something else. And fifth point here is energy. Like, you'll be surprised how many people say, yes, I feel very good about this interview, and they go in the interview and then they deliver a so-so experience. I mean, they just lose themselves in the moment, and they really don't enjoy the moment. I mean, okay, I understand you don't enjoy interviewing. No one really does, but you should show the energy. You should show that you really want the job. And I know it's a bit linked with the previous example, but this is more like on an attitude side that you can prepare well in advance. For example, in a phone interview, if you stay just relaxed like this and talk to someone over the phone, I guarantee you your answers will sound a lot more disengaged. But if you stay like this, it's a simple matter of posture. Your answers will sound so much more engaging. You show like you're really in the conversation. And probably even more interesting for the on-site, you can tell if someone says like this, yeah, all right, ask me whatever you want. I have questions for everything I have an answer for any question you might have. So, it doesn't play to your advantage. So be careful about these things. Be careful that companies are genuinely looking for people that exhibit energy. And of course, people should be curious and should be really interested in it, should really want the job. But if you're not energetic, if you don't have the necessary energy to get the job done, then so what? I mean, it's not all that hard. And hand gestures work too. Although I must admit here, I'm not an expert in the field. I'm still struggling myself with these things. I'm still learning on how to work on this, but they could definitely play to your advantage here. And one more note here. Keep in mind, for an on-site interview, you'll be interviewing for more than 1 hour. So energy levels must be ideally constant, if not spiking upwards throughout your interviewing round. So in other words, don't just start and deplete your energy in the first interview. Just ensure that you will deliver the best version of yourself throughout that interviewing process. So these were my 5 pieces of advice of what to really consider going into a job interview. So hopefully you found at least some of these tips and tricks useful. And as always, if you want to support this channel, please feel free to share your interview outcomes in the comment sections of the video. Thank you.